Back in March of 2020, March 12th to be exact, it was announced that Disneyland in Anaheim, California would be shutting down due to the coronavirus pandemic. And a lot of folks out there thought perhaps that this was by edict from California Governor Gavin Newsom. But thanks to a recent massive expose in the New York Times on Sunday, September 8th, 2024, we now know the real story behind the scenes. That is to say that announcement was made within 24 to 48 hours of Bob Chapek stepping in as the new CEO. But it wasn't his decision either. This is more in the chronicle of how Bob Iger sabotaged his replacement, Bob Chapek, his chosen successor, because Bob Iger just couldn't let go of control. And you're not going to believe this part of the story.
Renegade Online.
So basically, this is following the meeting, right? On the way back to California, Gavin Newsom called Bob Iger. This is California's Looney Tune governor.
Who Iger is, he's buddies with all the Looney Tunes.
Oh, yeah.
Not those Looney Tunes, these Looney Tunes.
Gavin Newsom called Bob Iger, announcing that he would restrict public gatherings in California because of COVID. But he thought Disneyland might stay open. The governor didn't want people to panic, and he feared they might if Disneyland closed. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, this next paragraph is insane.
Yeah. Bob Iger, according to the New York Times and witnesses they interviewed, Bob Iger argued to Gavin Newsom that keeping the theme park open was a bad idea given the health risks both to guests and employees. Gavin Newsom later publicly praised Mr. Iger's advice and cooperation.
He was working to sabotage the financial interests of the company. There was a way to keep the park open and safe, at least for some duration, and Iger chose to tank his own asset. And now, in retrospect, we know how things worked. This is amazing to me.
Yeah. So Iger actually advocated for the closure of Disneyland, and I want to stress Disneyland. But if this is true, then it would also tend to, you'd think he would extend that to Disney World. Again, by this time, Shanghai and Hong Kong parks had already shut down, and that was in China. And again, let's play devil's advocate. At the time, we were dealing with the lie that we were getting about 2 weeks to stop the spread, right? Which turned out to be complete bogus nonsense.
Well, the whole thing was we had people telling us what to do when they were the ones who had a part in making it all happen. And they gave us some of the absolute worst advice for stopping this you could imagine. We all were safe outdoors, and there were certain medical procedures happening that likely ended the lives of people. And we caused our most valuable and beloved elderly individuals to pass away with no one there near them. So it's just about an unforgivable sin that was perpetrated upon society.
Yep. And here's why this is important. Because if you stop and think about it now, who did Gavin Newsom talk to? Bob Iger.
Bobby.
Who was the CEO of Disney at that moment, or supposed to be? Bob Chapek. Mr. Chapek didn't disagree with the decision to close the parks.
You think?
But he was furious that Mr. Iger had excluded him. The decision had nothing to do with Mr. Iger's creative mandate. Remember, this is right after Bob Iger said, I'm just going to help run the movie studios. I'm going to help work with the Hollywood people because I know them all. I'll sit here and I'll deal with Kevin Feige and Kathleen Kennedy and the guys at Pixar and whatever else. Right? That's what Iger wanted to do. TV and film. And then he sits down, he has a conversation with Gavin Newsom and tells him, go ahead and, we'll close down Disneyland parks too. To which
hey, let me paint something here. There's something, I just connected a dot here.
Who's
that's really
running
important.
this show?
There's a really important dot to connect. Okay, this is actually before. I'm refreshing my timeline here. This is actually before the stop the spread. We need 2 weeks. This is preemptive Bob Iger talking to the governor of California ahead of anything from the federal government that he wants to shut the parks down. Now, what did it say earlier?
I think by this point this was early March. So this was right about the time that discussion
this would have been late February.
No, well, I think they said this is actually, if we go back up, this was the meeting in March. They were prepping for the annual shareholder meeting.
Okay, well, let me just say this: the dot still is able to be connected here, and that is
here we go.
March
11th. Yeah.
Okay, March 11th. We'll have to go back and to see when the stop the spread was out of the federal government. But it seems to me that this is, were this not preceding that, I don't know why there would be a discussion, because the federal government was already going to make the ask.
Yeah.
So why would Bob Iger be so ready to shut down the parks instead of taking a different tact about this, of saying, well, what if we limit capacity to 20, 30%? What if we do these step 1, step 2, step 3 to protect guests? Why was he so quick to make this step? Well, early in the article, it mentioned that he had been briefed by his teams from ABC and the parks in Shanghai and Hong Kong. Iger was likely making these decisions contra Bob Chapek, or outside of what Chapek was deciding. Chapek may have agreed.
That's what the article is saying.
But he was making it, Valiant, he was making it based on Chinese misinformation.
Yes.
He's making financially detrimental decisions to the Walt Disney Company based on Chinese misinformation propaganda from the same country that spread the thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Much
job,
like many governments around the world did that year.
Good job, Bob.
Yep, that was it. But I mean, yeah, this is probably by this point around March, because they are saying the annual shareholder meeting, the debut for Chapek, that was March 11th. This is on the way back to California. So this is on the plane ride back, maybe a day or two later. So let's say we're somewhere around March 12th to 15th. We're in that mid-March. We're around the Ides of March, which this was about the time, or by that time, we had idiots like Fauci out there, fraudsters out there, talking about this thing, 2 week to stop the spread stuff.
Right. Remember, they were filling the skate parks because they wanted to keep you indoors, which, by the way, was the worst place you could possibly be for what we were facing. So they literally had us do the worst possible responses.
Yeah, Disney's executives worried about the shock that the park closures would have on the company's cash flow.
It's a theme park company. Close the parks? What's that going to do?
Yep. And Miss McCarthy, Christine McCarthy, and Mr. Chapek. Now, again, McCarthy and Chapek, not Iger, made the decision to quickly furlough, albeit with health benefits, more than 90,000 employees at the theme parks. So Bob Iger is the one that had the conversation with Governor Gavin Newsom of California. Hey, yeah, we'll go ahead and shut down Disneyland too. And again, I don't know, do we believe that Gavin Newsom didn't want to close Disneyland? And then Bob Iger was the one in his magnanimous brilliance said, no, we'll shut it down. Let's shut it down. I have no, but take that. The point of that is the conversation was held. The part I absolutely believe without question is the conversation was held between between Iger and Newsom.
Sure.
And Chapek was not part of the conversation. But once again, now look what happens. Bob Iger, who is not the CEO, who was not supposed to be in charge of theme parks especially, that was something specifically left to Chapek, and then at that point, Josh D'Amaro, right? They weren't included in that conversation, but it was Bob Chapek that, for the first time, like the first day on the job, had to deal with a massive Bob Iger decision-making fallout. A decision that Iger shouldn't have been making or wasn't supposed to make.
Again,
And
Chapek was the fall guy.
Christine McCarthy and Chapek had to go in and clean up after Iger's stupid mess and furlough almost 100,000 employees at the theme parks. Parks. That's not just Disneyland. That's Orlando too, right there. Ain't no 90,000 employees at Disneyland. Okay? So again, that spread from there. I love the title of the next section here. Bob Iger overruled them. He decided to wait until the government passed a COVID relief bill. So okay, you're telling California to shut the parks down. Chapek's immediate response and McCarthy's immediate response, you know, the two money people. Okay, well, we got to furlough all the employees. You're going to shut the parks down. You're telling me that we can't keep paying employees if we're going to shut down the revenue source. We have to furlough them. Iger said, no, don't do that. Let's wait till they pass a COVID relief bill. How would he know that the government would definitively and how would he know what that bill would look like to say, we'll wait for the bill?
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.